The coffee had gone cold in Chen's hand before she even realized she was still holding it. She stood in the alley behind Rosewood Diner, her white apron stained with ketchup and gravy, her black hair escaping from its ponytail in wild tendrils that stuck to her damp forehead. The November wind cut through the thin fabric of her uniform, but she didn't move, couldn't move. The words were still echoing in her head, bouncing around her skull like bullets ricocheting off metal. "You're fired." Before we continue with Maya's story, if you're already invested in what happens next, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring you more real-life stories like this one. Now, let's see how Maya handles this devastating moment. 2 words. Just 2 simple words that had somehow managed to dismantle 6 years of her life in the span of a heartbeat. The back door of the diner swung open with its familiar creak, and Rosa Martinez stepped out, her round face creased with concern. Rosa had been working at Rosewood longer than anyone. 23 years of serving coffee and scrambled eggs to the same rotating cast of regulars who treated the place like a second home. She carried 2 styrofoam cups, steam rising from them like small prayers into the cold afternoon air. "Mija," Rosa said softly, pressing one of the cups into Maya's free hand. "You need to drink something warm. You're shaking." Maya looked down at her hands and realized Rosa was right. The trembling had started in her fingers and spread through her entire body, a physical manifestation of the shock that had locked her muscles into place. She set down the cold coffee on the dumpster beside her and wrapped both hands around the fresh cup, letting the heat seep into her palms. "I don't understand," Maya whispered, her voice barely audible over the distant traffic on Henderson Street. "I returned it. I did the right thing." Rosa moved closer, her own breath visible in the frigid air. At 56, she had seen countless employees come and go through Rosewood's revolving door. But Maya had been different. Maya had stayed. Maya had cared. Maya had turned the Tuesday morning shift into something people actually looked forward to. Remembering orders without writing them down. Checking on the elderly customers who came in alone. Slipping extra cookies to kids whose parents looked tired and defeated. "I know you did, sweetheart," Rosa said, her accent thickening with emotion. "But Gerald's been looking for a reason. You know that. Ever since his nephew started working here, he's been clearing out anyone who might take hours away from family." Maya's jaw tightened. Gerald Petersen, the day manager, had been a fixture at Rosewood for 8 years. A thin, perpetually irritated man with a comb over that fooled no one and a tendency to stand too close when he talked. But this, Maya gestured helplessly, her voice cracking. "Firing me for returning a wallet someone left behind? That's not about Brandon. That's just cruel." The wallet in question had been discovered at 2:47 p.m., tucked between the worn red cushions of booth 7, Maya's section. She'd been clearing plates from the lunch rush when her fingers brushed against the leather, warm from sitting near the window where the afternoon sun pooled through the glass. It was expensive, that much was immediately clear. The leather was butter-soft, the kind that spoke of craftsmanship and money, with subtle stitching that probably cost more than Maya made in a week. She'd opened it to find identification, and her breath had caught. The cards inside were black. Not the everyday plastic of normal people, but the heavy, metallic black of cards that didn't have spending limits. The driver's license showed a man in his early 30s with dark eyes and an expression that seemed almost amused, as if he found the DMV photographer entertaining. The name read, Alexander Blackwood. Maya knew the name immediately. Everyone in the city knew that name. Blackwood Industries owned half the commercial real estate downtown, had founded 3 successful tech startups, and Alexander himself had been featured in Forbes magazine twice before he turned 30. He was old money meeting new innovation, the kind of person who existed in a different stratosphere than the world of hourly wages and tip jars. She'd taken the wallet directly to Gerald, interrupting him in the middle of berating a new dishwasher about water spots on the glassware. "Mr. Petersen, someone left this in my section. It belongs to Alexander Blackwood." Gerald's eyes had widened, then narrowed. He'd snatched the wallet from her hands with more force than necessary, flipping it open to examine the contents. Maya had watched something shift in his expression, something calculating and cold. Did you take anything out of it? He'd asked, his voice sharp. What? No, of course not. I found it and brought it straight to you. How do I know that? Gerald had stepped closer, his coffee breath hot on her face. How do I know you didn't pocket the cash first? Or take photos of his cards? Maya had stepped back, confusion and anger warring in her chest. Because I wouldn't do that. You've known me for 6 years, Mr. Petersen. When have I ever? I don't know what I know about you, Gerald had interrupted, his voice rising loud enough that several customers had turned to look. What I know is that wallets don't just get found by staff without something fishy going on. For all I know, you're working with someone. Maybe you plan to clone his cards. Maybe you already took money and you're trying to cover your tracks by being the honest one who returns it. The accusation had been so absurd, so completely disconnected from reality, that Maya had actually laughed. A short, disbelieving sound that had only seemed to infuriate Gerald further. You think this is funny? He'd hissed. You think I'm going to let someone with sticky fingers work in my restaurant? It's not your restaurant, Maya had said quietly, the words escaping before she could stop them. You're just the manager. That had been the final straw. Gerald's face had flushed purple, and within minutes, Maya had found herself in the cramped office that smelled perpetually of burnt coffee and disappointment, listening to him recite company policy about theft and suspicious behavior. He'd called the owner, Mrs. Edith Rosewood herself, and painted such a damning picture that the elderly woman, who lived 3 states away and hadn't set foot in the diner in over 5 years, had agreed to termination over the phone without ever speaking to Maya directly. Now, standing in the alley with Rosa, Maya felt the injustice of it burning in her throat like acid. She'd done the right thing. She'd done exactly what anyone with a shred of integrity would have done, and it had cost her everything. What am I going to do? Maya asked the question rhetorically but desperately. Rent's due in 12 days. My mom's medication costs $300 a month, and insurance only covers half. I was already working doubles just to keep up with the student loans from that one semester at community college. Rosa squeezed Maya's shoulder, her grip firm and grounding. You'll find something else, Mija. You're good at what you do. Any restaurant in this city would be lucky to have you. But Maya knew it wasn't that simple. Rosewood Diner sat in the heart of downtown, surrounded by high-end restaurants that required experience she didn't have and certifications she couldn't afford to obtain. The other diners and cafes in her price range were already staffed, and in a city where everyone was scrambling for work that paid above minimum wage, positions didn't open up often. The sound of breaking glass came from inside the diner, followed by Gerald's raised voice berating someone about clumsiness. Rosa's expression hardened. He's going to destroy that place, she muttered. Rosewood used to mean something, used to be about community and good food and treating people right. Now it's just Gerald's little kingdom of misery. Maya took a sip of the coffee Rosa had brought, strong and sweet, the way Rosa always made it, and felt the warmth begin to thaw the numbness spreading through her chest. She looked up at the brick wall of the building beside them, where someone had spray-painted a fading mural of a sunrise years ago. The colors had dulled, but the image persisted, stubbornly optimistic against the grimy urban backdrop. I should go, Maya said finally, though her feet didn't move. I need to figure out my next steps. Update my resume. Start making calls. Where will you go? Rosa asked gently. The question hung in the air between them. Maya's apartment was a 30-minute bus ride away, a studio in a building where the heat worked sporadically and the neighbors fought loudly enough to shake the walls. But it was home, or as close to home as she could afford. Her mother lived 2 floors above her, in an identical unit that Maya had helped her mother move into after the divorce 3 years ago. Home, Maya said, though the word felt hollow. I'll go home and start looking for work. Maybe call some of the places I applied to before I got hired here. Rosa pulled Maya into a tight hug, the kind that mothers give when words aren't enough. You call me if you need anything, she said firmly. Money, food, a reference, anything. You hear me? Maya nodded against Rosa's shoulder, breathing in the familiar scent of flour and vanilla that always clung to Rosa's clothes. When they separated, Maya noticed the sheen in Rosa's eyes, the way her mouth was pressed into a thin line to keep from crying. "Thank you," Maya whispered, "for everything. For being kind when nobody else was." She walked away before Rosa could respond, before the tears threatening to spill could actually fall. The alley opened onto Henderson Street, where the afternoon crowd surged past in their own bubbles of urgency and purpose. Maya joined the flow, another body in the current, clutching her purse against her side and trying to remember how to breathe normally. The bus stop was 3 blocks away, and Maya walked them on autopilot, her mind spinning through the same impossible calculations. The mathematics of poverty were always the same, never enough stretching to cover too much need. At the bus stop, an older man in a wool coat was reading a newspaper, the headline visible above the fold. Blackwood Industries announces major expansion. 500 new jobs coming to downtown. Maya stared at the headline, at the photo of Alexander Blackwood cutting a ribbon in front of a gleaming building, and felt a bitter laugh bubble up in her throat. His wallet was probably back in his hands by now. Gerald had likely called him personally, fawning and obsequious, spinning some story about the suspicious circumstances under which it was discovered. Blackwood had probably never even thought about the woman who found it, the hourly worker whose life had been upended by a simple act of honesty. The bus arrived with a hydraulic hiss, and Maya climbed aboard, swiping her pass and finding a seat near the back. The city scrolled past the window, steel and glass towers giving way to older brick buildings, upscale boutiques fading into corner stores with barred windows. She watched a woman about her age pushing a stroller, laughing at something on her phone. She watched teenagers in private school uniforms buying coffee from a cart vendor. She watched construction workers on a break, sitting on the edge of a fountain and sharing sandwiches from a cooler. All of them moving through their lives, unaware that in one moment, everything could shift. That doing the right thing could be the exact wrong choice. That integrity didn't pay rent or keep the lights on or fill prescription bottles. By the time Maya reached her stop, the sun was beginning its descent, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose that seemed almost mocking in their beauty. She walked the 2 blocks to her building, a 4-story structure with peeling green paint and a front door that never quite latched properly. The elevator was broken again, so she took the stairs, her legs heavy with exhaustion that had nothing to do with physical labor. Her apartment was exactly as she'd left it that morning. A small space she tried to make cheerful with second-hand furniture and plants that somehow survived despite the limited light. The sofa sagged in the middle but was covered with a bright throw blanket. The kitchenette was barely large enough for one person, but Maya had organized it with careful efficiency. Photos covered one wall, her mother, her younger brother Michael who was serving overseas, friends from high school who had scattered to other cities chasing better opportunities. Maya dropped her purse on the counter and stood in the center of the room, suddenly overwhelmed by the silence. At the diner, there was always noise, conversation and clattering dishes and the hiss of the coffee machine. Here, there was only the distant sound of traffic and the couple next door already starting their nightly argument. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from her mother. "How was work? Sweetheart? I made too much soup. Come up for dinner." Maya stared at the message, her thumbs hovering over the keyboard. She couldn't tell her mother yet. Couldn't add that worry to all the others her mother already carried. The medical bills, the limited income from disability, the constant anxiety about making ends meet. Her mother had worked 3 jobs to raise Maya and Michael after their father left, and had sacrificed everything to give them chances she'd never had. The knowledge that Maya had lost yet another job would break something in her mother's carefully maintained optimism. She typed back, 8 at work, long shift, rain check for tomorrow. The lie felt like gravel in her mouth, but it was kinder than the truth. Maya changed out of her uniform, folding it carefully despite knowing she'd never wear it again. The motion was automatic, years of habit overriding logic. She pulled on sweatpants and an oversized college hoodie that had belonged to Michael, then sat on the edge of her bed and finally let herself cry. The tears came in waves. Anger and fear and grief all tangled together into something that felt too large for her body to contain. She cried for the unfairness of it all, for the 6 years she'd poured into a job that had discarded her without hesitation. She cried for all the customers she'd never see again, the regulars who had become something like family. She cried for the uncertainty stretching out before her like a dark road with no streetlights. When the tears finally subsided, Maya felt hollowed out but strangely clear-headed. She got up, splashed cold water on her face, and opened her laptop. A 5-year-old model that took 3 minutes to boot up and occasionally froze for no apparent reason. She needed a plan. Needed to be strategic and methodical, because falling apart wasn't a luxury she could afford. Maya opened a job search site and began scrolling through listings, marking anything that seemed remotely possible. Waitress positions at chain restaurants across town. Retail work at stores in the mall. Administrative assistant roles that wanted 3 years of experience she didn't have. Each application would take time, and time was a resource running out faster than money. Her phone rang, shattering the concentration she'd barely managed to build. Unknown number. Maya hesitated, then answered, her voice still rough from crying. Hello. Hi. Is this Maya Chen? A woman's voice, professional and crisp. Yes, this is Maya. This is Jennifer calling from Blackwood Industries. I'm Mr. Blackwood's personal assistant. Do you have a few minutes to talk? Maya's heart stopped, then restarted at double speed. She sat up straighter, as if the woman on the other end of the line could somehow see her through the phone. Yes, I have time. Wonderful. Mr. Blackwood asked me to reach out regarding an incident that occurred earlier today at Rosewood Diner. I understand you were the one who found and returned his wallet. I was, Maya said cautiously, unsure where this was going. Is there a problem? Quite the opposite, Jennifer said, and Maya could hear the smile in her voice. Mr. Blackwood would like to thank you personally. Would you be available to meet with him tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock? I can send a car to pick you up from your address. Maya's mind reeled. This had to be a mistake, some kind of misunderstanding. People like Alexander Blackwood didn't meet with people like her. Didn't send cars. Didn't make personal thank you calls for returned wallets. Tomorrow at 10? Maya repeated, stalling for time while her thoughts caught up. Yes, if that works for you. Or we can arrange another time that's more convenient. Convenient. As if Maya's calendar was full of important appointments instead of completely, devastatingly empty. 10 o'clock works, Maya heard herself say. Thank you. Perfect. I'll text you the details and the car service information. Have a good evening, Miss Chen. The call ended, leaving Maya staring at her phone like it might contain answers to questions she didn't know how to ask. A text appeared moments later with an address in the financial district and instructions for the car pickup. Maya read the message 3 times, then set her phone down carefully, as if sudden movement might cause the entire interaction to evaporate like a dream. Tomorrow at 10 o'clock, she will meet Alexander Blackwood. Tomorrow at 10 o'clock, something would happen, though she had no idea what. Outside her window, the city lights were beginning to spark to life, thousands of points of illumination pushing back against the gathering dark. Maya watched them appear one by one, her mind racing through possibilities and implications, trying to solve an equation with too many unknown variables. The wallet had cost her a job, had upended her life in the span of a single afternoon. But maybe, just maybe, it might lead to something else, something she couldn't yet see or name or understand. She thought about Gerald's face when he'd fired her, thought about his accusations and his certainty that no good deed went unpunished. She thought about Rosa's hug and the cold coffee in the alley and the way her hands had shaken with shock and grief. And then she thought about tomorrow, about meeting a man who existed in a world so far removed from her own that they might as well live on different planets. What could he possibly want to say that required a face-to-face meeting? What could she possibly have to offer someone who had everything? Maya pulled the throw blanket around her shoulders and curled up on the sagging sofa, her laptop balanced on her knees, the job listings still glowing on the screen. But she wasn't seeing them anymore. She was seeing tomorrow, approaching like a storm on the horizon, full of electricity and uncertainty and the potential for everything to change. The clock on her wall ticked forward, measuring out the hours until morning, until answers, Until whatever came next in this impossible day that had started with coffee and routine and ended with her entire life suspended in the balance of a single phone call. Maya closed her laptop and stared at the ceiling, counting the cracks in the plaster because counting was easier than thinking. Tomorrow would come whether she was ready or not. Tomorrow would bring Alexander Blackwood and his thanks and whatever mysterious purpose required her presence in a world she'd only ever glimpsed from the outside. She didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. The possibilities and fears chased each other in endless circles through her mind, and every time she closed her eyes, she saw Gerald's contemptuous sneer, felt the phantom weight of the wallet in her hands, heard Jennifer's professional voice saying Mr. Blackwood would like to thank you personally. Tomorrow, Maya thought. Tomorrow everything changes. She just didn't know yet whether it would change for better or worse. Whether this was the beginning of redemption or just another way for the universe to prove that hope was a dangerous thing to carry when you had nothing left to lose. The alarm Maya hadn't set startled her awake at 6:47 a.m., which was impossible until she realized it was her body's internal clock, trained by 6 years of opening shifts at Rosewood. Her eyes opened to gray morning light filtering through thin curtains, and for 3 blessed seconds, she forgot. Then memory crashed back. The firing, the phone call, the meeting scheduled for 10 o'clock, and her stomach clenched with anxiety so sharp it felt physical. She lay still, staring at the water stain on the ceiling that looked like a map of some undiscovered country, and tried to remember who she was before yesterday. Before the wallet. Before everything unraveled. Maya Chen had been the kind of child who rescued injured birds and cried at movies where the dog died. She'd grown up in a neighborhood where broken cars sat on blocks and driveways and everybody knew everybody's business. Where her mother worked morning shifts at a bakery and afternoon shifts at a call center. Where dinner was often cereal because by 8 p.m., her mother was too exhausted to cook. Maya had learned early that wanting things was dangerous. That every birthday wish and Christmas list was a reminder of what they couldn't afford. What would never arrive no matter how good she tried to be. So she'd stopped wanting. Stopped dreaming. I learned to be grateful for small mercies and modest expectations. Community college had lasted 1 semester before the debt and exhaustion forced her to drop out. She'd taken the job at Rosewood with resignation that felt like defeat. But something unexpected happened. She'd been good at it. Not just competent, genuinely good. Maya had discovered she could read people. Could sense when someone needed conversation or silence. When a weary parent needed their coffee refilled without asking. When an elderly customer was lonely and would linger for hours if someone just talked to them. She learned every regular's order, remembered their birthdays, asked about their kids and their jobs and their lives. The diner became a stage where she played a role that fit her better than anything else ever had. She was the girl who made people feel seen. Mrs. Kowalski's weekly visits, Jerome's daughter's scholarship search, Lily's math homework. These moments made the job more than just survival. They made Maya feel like she mattered. Now, lying in bed with the meeting looming ahead, Maya wondered if she'd ever find that again. If any other restaurant would give her the time and space to be more than just an order taker. If anywhere else would let her care about people the way Rosewood had, back before Gerald had turned the place into a factory of fear and resentment. She forced herself out of bed at 7:15. Her body heavy with exhaustion from a sleepless night. The shower took 10 minutes to produce hot water. Another battle with the ancient building infrastructure. And Maya stood shivering in her bathrobe waiting for steam to appear. When it finally did, she stepped under the spray and let the heat work its way into muscles that had been clenched tight since yesterday afternoon. What did one wear to meet a billionaire? The question haunted her as she stood dripping in front of her closet, staring at the meager collection of clothing that comprised her entire wardrobe. Work uniforms, jeans with threadbare knees, t-shirts from high school events. One black dress she'd bought for her cousin's wedding 3 years ago, now slightly too tight and with a loose hem she'd never gotten around to fixing. She settled on the dress paired with a cardigan that hid the worst of the tightness, black tights that had only one small run near the ankle, and the nicest shoes she owned. Black flats with a scuff on the toe that she tried to buff away with her thumb. In the bathroom mirror, she assessed the result. Presentable if you didn't look too closely. Professional if your standards weren't too high. Her face told a different story. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, remnants of crying and sleeplessness. Her skin had the pale, stretched quality of someone operating on pure anxiety. Maya applied concealer with shaking hands, added mascara to make her eyes look more awake, brushed color onto her cheeks to counteract the corpse-like pallor. The woman in the mirror looked like she was going to a funeral. Maybe she was, the funeral of whatever naive optimism had survived yesterday's disaster. At 8:30, Maya's phone buzzed with a text from the car service. Arriving in 15 minutes, she grabbed her purse. A sturdy black bag that had been her mother's, passed down when the strap on Maya's old one had finally given out, and did a last-minute check. Wallet with her ID and the $47 that might need to last until she found new work. Phone charger, tissues, a granola bar because she hadn't been able to force down breakfast. Her stomach too knotted with nerves. She was halfway out the door when she remembered she still hadn't told her mother about being fired. The guilt of that omission sat heavy in her chest as she locked the apartment and headed downstairs. She'd have to tell her today, and couldn't put it off any longer. But first, she needed to understand what this meeting was about. Needed to know if there was any chance, any possibility, that something good might emerge from the ruins of yesterday. The car was waiting at the curb when Maya emerged from her building. A sleek black sedan that looked like it cost more than she'd earn in 5 years. The driver, a woman in her 50s with silver hair in a neat bun, got out and opened the rear door with practiced efficiency. "Miss Chen?" she asked with a warm smile. "That's me," Maya said, her voice small. "I'm Patricia, Mr. Blackwood's regular driver. Please, make yourself comfortable." The interior of the car smelled like leather and expensive cologne, nothing like the vinyl and cleaning solution scent of the buses Maya was accustomed to. The seats were cream-colored and impossibly soft, and there was bottled water in a holder beside her, along with a small basket of pastries wrapped in white paper. "Help yourself," Patricia said, catching Maya's eye in the rearview mirror as she pulled into traffic. "It's about a 20-minute drive, depending on traffic. Mr. Blackwood's office is in the Blackwood Tower downtown." Maya had seen the tower countless times. A glass and steel monument that dominated the skyline, 53 stories of wealth and power that reflected the sun like a beacon. She'd never imagined being inside it, had never had reason to be anywhere near it except to pass by on her way to somewhere else. She took a pastry, a croissant that flaked apart at the first bite, buttery and perfect, and immediately felt guilty for enjoying it. How could she eat when her entire life was falling apart? But the pastry was there and her stomach was empty, and she was so tired of denying herself even small pleasures. Patricia drove with smooth confidence through the morning traffic, taking streets Maya recognized but had never traveled in such comfort. They passed a coffee shop where she'd once waited tables for 2 months before the place closed. They passed the library where she'd spent countless hours studying for her GED after dropping out of community college. They passed the corner where she'd waited in the cold for a bus that was always late, watching people in cars like this one drive by without seeing her. "First time meeting Mr. Blackwood?" Patricia asked conversationally. "Yes," Maya managed. I found his wallet yesterday, at the diner where I worked." "Worked?" Patricia repeated, catching the past tense. "You don't work there anymore?" Maya hesitated, then decided there was no point in hiding it. "I was fired. Yesterday. My manager accused me of trying to steal from the wallet, even though I brought it straight to him without opening it beyond checking the ID." Patricia's eyes met hers in the mirror, sharp and assessing. "That's why he wants to meet you," she said quietly. "He knows what happened. He called the diner last night to thank them for returning his wallet, and your manager told him a very different story than what actually occurred. When Mr. Blackwood asked to speak to you directly to express his gratitude, the manager said you no longer worked there and refused to provide your contact information. He had to hire someone to track you down." Maya's heart began to pound. "He hired someone to find me?" "Mr. Blackwood doesn't like injustice," Patricia said simply. "And he particularly doesn't like being used as an excuse for it. When he discovered the full story, and believe me, he has people who can discover things, let's say he was not pleased. They were entering the financial district now, where buildings reached toward the sky like monuments to ambition and excess. The Blackwood Tower rose ahead of them, its glass facade catching the morning sun and throwing it back in blinding brilliance. Patricia pulled into an underground parking garage where a uniformed attendant waved them through with a friendly nod. The garage was immaculate, painted white, well-lit, with assigned spaces marked in gold lettering. Patricia pulled into a spot near the elevators and came around to open Maya's door. "You'll do fine," Patricia said, her tone kind. "Mr. Blackwood may be wealthy, but he's a good man. He values honesty above almost everything else. What you did, returning that wallet without expectation of reward, that means something to him." Maya wanted to believe her, but 6 years of serving people had taught her that the wealthy were rarely interested in the struggles of those who made their comfort possible. She'd seen rich customers snap their fingers at her, complain about wait times that were entirely reasonable, leave insultingly small tips after running her ragged with constant demands. Why would Alexander Blackwood be any different? The elevator was another study in luxury. Mirrors on 3 walls, a floor so polished Maya could see her reflection, soft classical music playing from hidden speakers. Patricia pressed a button marked 53, Executive Offices, and the elevator rose with such smooth speed that Maya barely felt the movement. Her palms were sweating. She wiped them surreptitiously on her dress, hating the nervous gesture, hating the way her heart was racing like she'd run a marathon. This was just a meeting, just a conversation. Whatever happened, she'd survive it. She'd survived everything else life had thrown at her. The elevator doors opened onto a reception area that belonged in a magazine spread about wealth and taste. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, offering a view that stretched for miles in every direction. The furniture was modern and minimal, all clean lines and expensive materials. A massive desk dominated one corner, behind which sat a young man with perfect hair and a suit that probably cost more than 3 months of Maya's rent. "Miss Chen?" he asked, standing as they approached. "I'm David, Mr. Blackwood's personal assistant. Jennifer, who called you yesterday, is out today, so I'll be helping you. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water?" "Water would be good," Maya said, her throat suddenly dry as sand. David gestured to a seating area with leather chairs that looked like works of art. "Please make yourself comfortable. Mr. Blackwood is just finishing a call. He'll be with you in a few minutes." Patricia gave Maya's shoulder a quick, reassuring squeeze before heading back to the elevator. Maya sat carefully on one of the chairs, afraid she might somehow damage it, and accepted the water David brought in a glass that felt expensive and fragile in her hands. The minutes stretched. Maya watched the second hand on a wall clock make lazy circles, waiting for whatever came next. The door to the inner office opened, and a man stepped out, tall, dressed in a dark suit that fit him with the perfection that came from custom tailoring. His dark hair slightly tousled as if he'd been running his hands through it. Alexander Blackwood looked different in person than in his photographs. More real somehow, with lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled often and a slight tension in his shoulders that spoke of constant pressure. His eyes found Maya's immediately, and something in his expression softened. "Miss Chen," he said, crossing the room with his hand extended. "Thank you for coming. I'm Alexander Blackwood." His handshake was firm but not crushing, his palm warm against hers. Up close, Maya could see the faint shadow of stubble on his jaw, the way his dark eyes assessed her with an intelligence that felt almost invasive in its intensity. "Please," he said, gesturing back toward his office. "Let's talk in private." Maya followed him through the door, her shoes silent on carpet so thick it felt like walking on clouds. The office was massive, easily twice the size of her entire apartment, with those same enormous windows offering a view that made her feel like she was standing at the edge of the world. A desk that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of wood dominated one side of the room, but Alexander led her instead to a more casual seating area with a sofa and armchairs arranged around a low table. "Please sit," he said, taking one of the armchairs while Maya perched on the edge of the sofa. Continuing section 2. "I want to start by apologizing." Maya blinked, confused. "Apologizing? For what? For what happened to you because of me?" Alexander said, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. his posture open and sincere. "I called Rosewood Diner last night to personally thank whoever had returned my wallet. Your manager, Gerald Petersen, I believe, told me a very disturbing story. He claimed you'd been caught attempting to steal from my wallet, that you'd only turned it in after being confronted by another employee, and that you'd been terminated for theft." Maya's face flushed hot with shame and anger. "That's not what happened. That's not even close to." "I know," Alexander interrupted gently. "I had my security team pull the diner's surveillance footage. All of it. I watched you find the wallet, open it only long enough to check the ID, and take it directly to your manager. I watched him accuse you. I watched you defend yourself. And I watched him fire you for absolutely no legitimate reason." The room seemed to tilt slightly. Maya gripped the edge of the sofa cushion to steady herself. You saw all that?" "I did. And I've already contacted Mrs. Edith Rosewood, the actual owner of the establishment. She was horrified to learn what had happened. Apparently, Gerald Petersen painted a very different picture when he called her yesterday. She's requested to speak with you directly, and she's already initiated termination proceedings for Mr. Petersen." Maya's mind reeled. Gerald was being fired? The man who'd made her life miserable for months, who'd destroyed her livelihood with false accusations, was finally facing consequences? "I don't understand," Maya said slowly. "Why would you go to all this trouble? It was just a wallet. You have money. You could have replaced everything in it." Alexander's expression grew serious. "The wallet contained my late father's wedding ring. It was the only thing of his I carry with me every day. The credit cards, the cash, none of that mattered. But that ring," his voice caught slightly, "that was irreplaceable. You saved something I thought I'd lost forever. And instead of being rewarded for your integrity, you were punished. That's not just wrong. It's intolerable." Maya felt tears prick her eyes but forced them back. She would not cry in front of this man, would not show weakness when she needed to appear strong and capable. "Mrs. Rosewood wants to offer you your job back," Alexander continued, "with a significant raise and a formal apology. She's asked me to convey that to you, along with back pay for the hours you missed. You should have felt like victory, should have felt like justice finally served. But instead," Maya found herself shaking her head. "I don't want to go back there," she heard herself say. "Even with Gerald gone, the place it's not what it used to be, and I don't want to be somewhere I have to be rescued. I want to earn my place." Alexander studied her for a long moment, his dark eyes thoughtful. "Then let me make you a different offer. I own several restaurants in this city, nice places, where the staff is treated with respect and paid fairly. I can guarantee you a position at any of them, with better wages than you were making at Rosewood and full benefits." Maya's breath caught. It was more than she'd hoped for, more than she'd dared to imagine. But something in her hesitated, some stubborn pride that had survived every hardship. "I appreciate that, Mr. Blackwood. I really do. But I need to know I got the job because I'm good at what I do, not because I found your wallet. I don't want charity." "It's not charity," Alexander said firmly. "It's justice. And it's recognition that someone who acts with integrity in a moment when it would have been easier to do otherwise deserves to be supported, not punished." Maya looked down at her hands, at the nails she'd carefully painted last night to try to look professional, at the calluses from years of carrying heavy trays and endless hours on her feet. She thought about her mother upstairs, about the medication costs and the rent coming due. She thought about Jerome's daughter and Mrs. Kowalski's lonely Tuesdays and Lily's math homework. She thought about who she wanted to be and what she was willing to accept to survive. "Can I think about it?" Maya asked quietly. "The restaurant offers. Can I have a day or two to consider?" Alexander nodded slowly, something like respect crossing his features. "Of course. Take all the time you need. David will give you his card. Call any time you have questions or when you've made a decision." He paused, then added, "May I ask what's making you hesitate?" Maya met his eyes directly for the first time, forcing herself not to look away despite her discomfort. "I've spent my whole life accepting help because I had no other choice, taking handouts, living on other people's kindness. And every time it made me feel smaller. Like I was less than everyone else because I needed them and they didn't need me. I'm tired of feeling that way. So if I take this job, I need to know it's real. That I earned it. Then earn it, Alexander said simply. Come work at one of my restaurants on a trial basis. 2 weeks. If you're as good as I suspect you are based on what I learned about you yesterday, the job is yours permanently. If not, we part ways with no hard feelings. Fair. It was more than fair. It was a lifeline thrown without strings attached, offered by a man who had no reason to care about her beyond a moment of returned property. Maya felt the tight knot in her chest begin to loosen, just slightly. Fair? She agreed. Extending her hand, Maya's life is taking an unexpected turn. If you're enjoying this incredible journey and want to see how it ends, hit that like button right now and share this story with someone who needs inspiration today. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. They shook on it, and when Maya stood to leave, she felt different somehow. Lighter, but also more solid. As if something fundamental had shifted in the architecture of her life. The restaurant was called Meridian, and it occupied the ground floor of a renovated historic building in the Arts District. Maya stood outside on Monday morning, staring up at the elegant gold lettering on the glass doors, and tried to convince her racing heart to slow down. Through the windows, she could see white tablecloths and gleaming silverware, exposed brick walls adorned with local artwork, and pendant lights that cast a warm, inviting glow even in the daytime. This was nothing like Rosewood. This was the kind of place where entrees cost what she used to make in tips for an entire shift. Maya had spent the weekend in a blur of preparation and revelation. She told her mother everything, the firing, the wallet, the meeting with Alexander Blackwood. Her mother had cried, then laughed, then pulled Maya into a fierce hug that had lasted several minutes. You see, her mother had whispered, good things come to good people. Not always right away, but eventually. Maya wanted to believe that, wanted to trust that the universe occasionally bent toward justice instead of just chaos and cruelty. But she'd been disappointed too many times to fully embrace hope without reservations. She'd also called Rosa, who had screamed with joy loud enough that Maya had to hold the phone away from her ear. Gerald's been fired. Rosa had crowded. Can you believe it? Mrs. Rosewood came in herself this morning. First time in years, and she fired him on the spot in front of everyone. You should have seen his face, Mija. Justice. But Rosa had also shared troubling news. Gerald wasn't taking his termination well. He'd been calling the other staff members, trying to rally support, claiming he'd been unfairly dismissed because of lies Maya had told. He was painting himself as the victim, her as the villain who had somehow manipulated a billionaire into destroying his career. Don't worry about him, Rosa had said firmly. Nobody believes his garbage. We all know what really happened. But Maya, be careful, okay? Gerald's not a good man and he's angry. Angry men do stupid things. Now, standing outside Meridian, Maya pushed thoughts of Gerald aside and focused on the challenge ahead. 2 weeks to prove herself. 2 weeks to show she belonged in a world that had always existed just beyond her reach. She pushed through the doors and was immediately struck by how different everything felt. The air smelled of fresh flowers and coffee, not the grease and disinfectant combination that had permeated Rosewood. The floors were actual hardwood, polished to a mirror shine. Even the music playing softly through speakers was different. Jazz, smooth and sophisticated, instead of the generic pop radio Rosewood had favored. You must be Maya. A woman in her 40s approached with an outstretched hand and a warm smile. She had auburn hair pulled back in an elegant twist and wore black slacks with a crisp white blouse. The uniform Maya would soon learn, for management at Meridian. I'm Catherine, the general manager. Mr. Blackwood told me to expect you. Welcome to the team. Catherine's enthusiasm felt genuine, which immediately put Maya at ease. They walked through the dining room, still empty this early, though setup was clearly underway, and into the kitchen, where stainless steel surfaces gleamed and chefs in white coats moved with practiced efficiency. We serve lunch and dinner, Catherine explained as they continued through to the back office. Lunch is 11:30 to 2:30, dinner from 5:30 to 10 o'clock. We're closed Mondays for staff meetings and deep cleaning, so today you'll shadow me and learn our systems. Tomorrow, you'll start serving in a limited section, just 3 tables to begin with, and we'll gradually increase your responsibility as you get comfortable. Maya nodded, taking mental notes as Catherine walked her through the computer system for orders, the layout of the wine cellar, the specific protocols for handling dietary restrictions and allergies. It was overwhelming, so much more complex than Rosewood's laminated menu and coffee pot, but also exhilarating. This was professional. This was serious. This mattered. The other servers arrived around 10 o'clock for the staff meeting. There were 6 of them, ranging from early 20s to mid-50s, and Catherine introduced Maya to each one. There was James, a theater actor who served tables between auditions. Rachel, a graduate student working on her dissertation in art history. Marcus, who'd been at Meridian since it opened 4 years ago and clearly took pride in his expertise. Elena, whose infectious laugh filled the room. Thomas, quiet and observant, who Maya learned was training to be a sommelier. And finally, Diane, the eldest of the group, who had warm brown eyes and immediately reminded Maya of Rosa. "We're glad to have you," Diane said sincerely, squeezing Maya's hand. "Catherine told us a bit about what happened at your last place. That took courage, what you did. Both the wallet thing and turning down the easy path back." The comment caught Maya off guard. She'd assumed Alexander would have kept the details private, but apparently he'd been transparent with Catherine about the situation. She wasn't sure how she felt about that, exposed maybe, but also validated. Her story mattered enough to be shared. Her integrity mattered enough to be recognized. The staff meeting covered the usual logistics, specials for the week, a heads-up about a large reservation on Thursday evening, reminders about proper wine service technique. But it also included something Maya had never experienced at Rosewood: genuine collaboration. Catherine asked for input from the servers about how to improve table turnover without rushing guests. They discussed a customer complaint from the previous week, not to assign blame, but to problem-solve together about how to better handle similar situations in the future. This, Maya realized, was what a functional workplace looked like. This was what happened when staff were treated as assets instead of annoyances. After the meeting, Maya spent hours shadowing Marcus through his section. She watched him greet regulars by name, saw how he timed his approaches to tables so guests never felt ignored but also never interrupted, observed the subtle way he upsold menu items by describing them with genuine enthusiasm rather than scripted sales pitches. "The key," Marcus told her during a rare quiet moment, "is reading the table. Some people want lots of interaction. They're here for the experience as much as the food. Others just want to be left alone to eat and talk. Your job is to figure out which type within the first 30 seconds and adjust accordingly." Maya nodded. She'd been doing exactly that for years. By the time lunch service ended at 2:30, Maya's feet ached and her head spun with new information. But she also felt a spark of something she hadn't experienced in months. Excitement. This could work. She could do this. She belonged here. Catherine pulled her aside as the last customers filtered out. "You have good instincts," she said approvingly. "I watched you watching Marcus, and I could see you processing everything. Tomorrow you'll get your own tables and I think you're going to do great. How are you feeling?" "Nervous," Maya admitted. "But I'm nervous. Like standing at the edge of a diving board. Kind of nervous." Catherine laughed. "That's exactly the right kind. Go home. Rest your feet, and come back tomorrow ready to dive in." Maya left Meridian feeling lighter than she had in days. The sun was still bright in the afternoon sky, and instead of taking the bus, she decided to walk, at least part of the way. She wanted to hold on to this feeling, this tentative hope that maybe things were finally turning around. She was 3 blocks from the restaurant when she saw him. Gerald Petersen stood leaning against a building, arms crossed, eyes locked on her with an intensity that made Maya's stomach drop. He'd been waiting, watching, and now he pushed off from the wall and started walking toward her with deliberate steps. Maya's first instinct was to run, but pride kept her feet planted. She was tired of running from men who thought they could intimidate her. Tired of making herself small to avoid conflict. "Maya-chan," Gerald said, his voice dripping with false pleasantness. Fancy seeing you here. Working at Meridian now, I see. Moving up in the world. Mr. Petersen, Maya replied coolly, keeping her tone professional despite her racing pulse. If you'll excuse me, I need to get home. She tried to step around him, but Gerald shifted to block her path. Not so fast. I think you and I need to have a conversation about what you did to me. What did I did to you? Maya's voice rose despite her attempt to stay calm. I didn't do anything to you. You fired me for returning a wallet. You lied to Mrs. Rosewood about what happened. You brought this on yourself. Gerald's face flushed red, his jaw clenching. I lost my job because of you. 8 years I gave to that diner, and one phone call from your rich boyfriend and suddenly I'm out on my ass. You think that's fair? He's not my boyfriend, Maya said, taking a step back as Gerald moved closer. And yes, I think it's fair. You accused me of theft when I did nothing wrong. You destroyed my livelihood because you were paranoid and power-hungry. What did you expect would happen when the truth came out? The truth? Gerald laughed, a harsh sound without humor. The truth is you're a little nobody who got lucky. You think Blackwood actually cares about you? You think you matter to him? He'll forget about you in a week, and you'll be right back where you started, serving coffee to people who don't even see you. The words stung because part of Maya feared they were true. But she refused to let Gerald see that fear. I don't need Alexander Blackwood to matter, she said firmly. I matter on my own. And the fact that you can't see that you measure people's worth by how useful they are to you, that's why you lost your job. Not because of me, because of who you are. For a moment, Gerald just stared at her, his expression twisting through anger and humiliation and something darker. Then he leaned in close, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow felt more threatening than shouting. You're going to regret this. You think you've won, but you have no idea who you're dealing with. I know people. I can make your life very difficult. Are you threatening me? Maya asked, loud enough that a passing couple turned to look. Gerald straightened immediately, stepping back and plastering on a false smile. Threatening? No. Just warning you that actions have consequences. That's all. He turned to the couple who were watching. Just a misunderstanding with an old employee. Nothing to worry about. He walked away without looking back, leaving Maya standing on the sidewalk with her heart hammering and her hands shaking. She watched him disappear around a corner, then quickly pulled out her phone and texted Catherine at Meridian. Ran into former manager. He's not handling his termination well. Thought you should know. Catherine's response came within seconds. Are you safe? Do you need someone to come get you? Maya looked around at the busy street, at the afternoon shoppers and office workers on lunch breaks. She was in public, surrounded by witnesses. Gerald was gone. She was fine. But the encounter had shaken something loose inside her, reminded her that justice sometimes came with a price. I'm okay, she texted back. Just wanted to document it in case there are any issues later. Good thinking. Get home safe. See you tomorrow. Maya walked the rest of the way to the bus stop with her phone in her hand and her attention split between the sidewalk ahead and the reflection in store windows, watching for any sign that Gerald was following. He wasn't, at least not that she could see, but the damage was done. The tentative hope she'd been nurturing all day had developed a crack, letting doubt seep back in. That night, Maya lay in bed unable to sleep, replaying the encounter on an endless loop. Gerald's threats had been vague enough to be deniable but specific enough to be frightening. What did he mean by, I know people? What could he actually do to her? Report her to some restaurant industry blacklist that didn't exist? Spread rumors? Show up at Meridian and cause a scene? Her phone buzzed with a text from her brother Michael, who she'd finally updated about everything. He was overseas, stationed somewhere he couldn't specify, but he'd managed to send a message. Proud of you, sis. You did the right thing and good things happened. That's how it's supposed to work. Don't let anyone make you doubt yourself. Love you. Maya read the message 3 times, letting the words sink into the anxious parts of her brain that were catastrophizing about everything that could go wrong. Michael was right. She'd done the right thing. She'd acted with integrity. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. But as she finally drifted towards sleep, Her last conscious thought was of Gerald's face, twisted with rage and humiliation, and his voice promising consequences she couldn't yet imagine. The next morning, Maya arrived at Meridian 30 minutes early, her stomach tight with nerves that had nothing to do with her first real shift. Catherine was already there, doing paperwork in the office, and she looked up with a smile when Maya knocked on the open door. "Ready for your first day?" Catherine asked. "I think so," Maya said, then hesitated. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "What exactly did Mr. Blackwood tell you about me? About what happened?" Catherine set down her pen and gave Maya her full attention. "He told me that you'd been unfairly terminated from your previous job for doing the right thing. He told me he wanted to give you an opportunity to work in a better environment, but that you'd insisted on proving yourself rather than accepting special treatment. He asked me to evaluate you fairly, based on your performance, and to be honest with him about whether you were a good fit for Meridian." She paused, then added gently, "He also told me that your former manager might cause problems, and that I should take any security concerns seriously. Is that what this is about? Did something else happen?" Maya explained the encounter with Gerald, keeping her voice steady despite the anxiety the retelling provoked. Catherine listened without interrupting, her expression growing more concerned with each detail. "Okay," Catherine said when Maya finished. "First, thank you for telling me. Second, you did exactly the right thing by documenting it via text yesterday. Third, I'm going to speak with our security team and make sure they have a photo of this Gerald person. If he shows up here, he won't get past the door." She reached across the desk and squeezed Maya's hand. "You're safe here, Maya. I promise you that. And if he continues to harass you, we'll involve the police." "Understood." Maya nodded, feeling some of the tension drain from her shoulders. This was what support looked like. This was what happened when you worked for people who actually cared about their employees' well-being. The lunch shift started at 11:30, and Catherine assigned Maya 3 tables in a quiet corner of the dining room, what she called training wheels tables, where new servers could learn without too much pressure. Maya's first customers were an elderly couple celebrating their anniversary, and she treated them with the same warmth and attention she'd given Mrs. Kowalski at Rosewood. She recommended the salmon special based on their mention of preferring lighter dishes, brought them complimentary champagne for their celebration, and made sure their water glasses never approached empty. When they left, the husband pressed a folded bill into her hand. "Thank you for making today special," he said softly. "You have a gift for this." Maya opened her hand to find a $50 tip on a $70 check. She felt tears prick her eyes but blinked them away, slipping the money into her apron pocket and returning to check on her other tables. By the end of the shift, Maya had served 9 tables, handled 2 dietary restrictions without incident, and made 1 error, bringing red wine instead of white to a customer who corrected her immediately. She'd apologized, fixed the mistake within 2 minutes, and the customer had been gracious about it. Catherine, who'd been observing from a distance, gave her a thumbs up as the last customers left. "Not bad for day 1, Catherine said during the debrief. "You're a natural with customer interaction, which is honestly the hardest thing to teach. The technical stuff, wine service, perfect timing, that comes with practice. But you already know how to make people feel valued, and that's 90% of the job." Maya went home that evening with $127 in tips and a sense of accomplishment that felt almost foreign. This was working. She was doing it. And despite Gerald's threats and her lingering anxiety, she was starting to believe maybe she deserved this chance. The next few days followed a similar pattern. Maya's section gradually expanded from 3 tables to 5, then 7. She learned the regulars' names and preferences, mastered the wine list, grew comfortable with the rhythm of service at Meridian. The other servers accepted her quickly, especially after Diane started calling her the customer whisperer, for her ability to defuse difficult situations with charm and patience. On Thursday evening, Maya was in the middle of her shift when she noticed a man at table 12 watching her intently. He was in his 50s, well-dressed, dining alone and barely touching his food. Every time Maya passed his table, she felt his eyes tracking her movement. It made her skin crawl, but she maintained her professional demeanor, checking on him with the same courtesy she showed everyone. When she brought his check, he spoke for the first time beyond placing his order. "You're Maya Chen." It wasn't a question. Maya's smile faltered slightly. "Yes, that's right. Is there anything else I can get for you?" "I'm a friend of Gerald Petersen's," the man said quietly. "He wanted me to tell you something." Maya's blood ran cold. She glanced around the dining room. All the other servers were occupied. Catherine was in the kitchen, and there were only 2 other occupied tables, both far away. "I don't think this is appropriate," she said, keeping her voice level. "If you have a message, you can share it with my manager." "No need to get defensive," the man said, pulling out his wallet to pay the check. "Gerald just wanted you to know he's not giving up. He's building a case against you, documenting everything about how you manipulated your way into this job through lies and seduction. He's planning to go to the media, tell them about how Alexander Blackwood is exploiting his position to reward attractive young women who flatter him." The accusation was so absurd, so divorced from reality, that Maya almost laughed. But she could also see the damage such a story could do, even if it was completely false. In the court of public opinion, rumors often mattered more than facts. "Please leave," Maya said, her voice shaking slightly despite her attempt at calm. "And tell Gerald that if he continues to harass me, I will get a restraining order." The man stood, dropped cash on the table, exact change, no tip, and walked out without another word. Maya stood frozen for a moment, the dinner plate she was holding suddenly too heavy. Then she set it down carefully on a nearby service station and went directly to find Catherine. Catherine listened to Maya's account with a deepening frown, then immediately called security. Within 10 minutes, they'd reviewed the security footage and identified the man from his credit card receipt. Daniel Morrison, listed as a friend on Gerald's Facebook page. Catherine called Alexander Blackwood's office directly, something Maya hadn't expected, and explained the situation to his assistant. "This has escalated beyond workplace drama," Catherine told Maya once she'd hung up. "Mr. Blackwood's legal team is going to send Gerald a cease and desist letter. If he continues, they'll pursue legal action for harassment. And Daniel Morrison is permanently banned from all Blackwood properties." Maya sat in the office, her head in her hands, feeling the weight of the situation crushing down on her. "This is my fault," she whispered. "I should have just taken my firing and moved on. I shouldn't have accepted Mr. Blackwood's help. Now Gerald's life is ruined and he's trying to ruin mine and—" "Stop," Catherine said firmly. "None of this is your fault. You returned a wallet. That's it. That's literally all you did. Gerald destroyed his own life with his paranoia and his false accusations. What's happening now is him refusing to accept responsibility for his own actions. You are not responsible for his choices." Rationally, Maya knew Catherine was right, but emotionally, she felt tangled up in guilt and fear and exhaustion. She'd wanted to prove she deserved this opportunity through hard work and skill. Instead, she'd become the center of drama that threatened to overshadow everything she'd accomplished. That night, Maya couldn't eat dinner. Her mother came downstairs, took one look at her, and insisted on staying the night, sleeping on Maya's cramped sofa despite protests. "You shouldn't be alone when you're scared," her mother said simply. "That's what family is for." They stayed up late, drinking tea and talking about everything and nothing. Her mother shared stories about her own struggles when Maya was young, the times creditors called threatening repossession, the months they'd lived on rice and beans because it was all they could afford, the terror of never knowing if they'd make it to the next paycheck. "But we always did," her mother said softly. "We always found a way, and you will too, sweetheart. You're stronger than you know." Maya wanted to believe her. I wanted to find that strength and hold on to it. But Gerald's campaign of harassment had introduced a new fear, that no matter how hard she worked or how much integrity she displayed, there would always be people determined to tear her down simply because they could. The cease and desist letter was delivered to Gerald's address on Friday morning. By Friday afternoon, he'd posted a long, rambling screed on Facebook claiming he was being silenced for telling the truth about corruption in the restaurant industry. The post was filled with thinly veiled references to Maya, certain opportunistic individuals who use their feminine wiles to manipulate wealthy men, and painted Gerald as a crusader against injustice rather than a fired manager lashing out. Several of Gerald's friends shared the post. By evening, it had been seen by over 1,000 people, and someone had screenshotted it and posted it to a local restaurant industry Facebook group. Maya's name wasn't explicitly mentioned, but several comments correctly identified her as the target of Gerald's accusations. Rosa called Maya in tears. "He's lying, Mija. Everyone at Rosewood knows he's lying. But these posts, people who don't know you might believe him." Maya sat on her apartment floor, her laptop open to the growing thread of comments, some defending her based on Rosa's counterpoints, others speculating about situations like this, where beautiful young women manipulated older successful men. She felt violated, exposed, turned into a character in someone else's narrative where the facts didn't matter as much as the story. Her phone rang. Alexander Blackwood. "Miss Chen," he said without preamble, his voice tight with controlled anger. "I've been made aware of the social media posts. My legal team is addressing them. But I wanted to call personally to apologize. This situation has spiraled beyond anything I anticipated, and you're bearing the brunt of consequences that should be mine." "It's not your fault," Maya said automatically. "It is, partially," Alexander insisted. "I underestimated how vindictive Gerald Petersen would be. I should have anticipated this and taken steps to protect you more thoroughly. That's on me." Maya closed her eyes, exhaustion weighing on her like a physical force. "What happens now?" "Now we fight back. Not with more social media posts or public statements that just feeds the drama. We fight back by continuing exactly what you've been doing, proving through your actions who you really are. Catherine tells me you've been exceptional this week. That customers are specifically asking for you. That you've already improved table turnover times while maintaining high satisfaction ratings." "I'm just doing my job," Maya said quietly. "You're doing more than that. You're being exactly who you've always been. Someone with integrity who treats people with kindness and respect. That's what will outlast Gerald's bitterness. That's what people will remember when all this noise fades away." After the call ended, Maya sat in silence, Alexander's words echoing in her head. She thought about the anniversary couple who'd thanked her for making their day special. About the family with young kids who'd been initially stressed and frazzled until Maya had brought coloring pages and extra patience. About the businessman who'd been typing frantically on his laptop until Maya had gently suggested a particular wine that helped him relax and eventually close the computer to actually enjoy his meal. These moments were real. These interactions mattered. And Gerald couldn't take them away, no matter how many lies he spread. Maya stood up, closed her laptop, and made a decision. She wouldn't read the comments anymore. Wouldn't track Gerald's posts or engage with the speculation. She would focus on what she could control. Showing up, doing excellent work, proving through daily action that she deserved the opportunity she'd been given. 2 weeks passed in a blur of hard work and quiet determination. Maya showed up early every shift, stayed late to help with closing duties, and treated every customer like they mattered, because to her they did. The social media storm around Gerald's accusations gradually faded as people moved on to the next drama, the next outrage, the next story that demanded their attention. Gerald's harassment stopped abruptly after Alexander's legal team filed for a restraining order. The cease and desist had been ignored, but the court order wasn't. Gerald was legally prohibited from contacting Maya, coming within 500 feet of her workplace, or posting about her on social media. He violated it once. A bitter post that was screenshot and reported within an hour, and spent a night in jail for contempt. After that, the post stopped. The harassment ended. Gerald disappeared from Maya's life as suddenly as he'd tried to destroy it. On her 14th day at Meridian, Catherine called Maya into the office after the lunch shift. Maya's heart raced as she sat down, unsure what to expect. Had she made some mistake she hadn't noticed? Had a customer complained? Had the 2-week trial revealed she wasn't good enough after all? Catherine smiled, sliding a folder across the desk. "These are your permanent employment papers. Full-time position, health benefits, paid time off, and a salary that's 20% higher than what you were making at Rosewood. Congratulations, Maya. You've more than earned this." Maya stared at the papers, her vision blurring with tears she'd been holding back for 2 weeks. Thank you. Thank you so much. Don't thank me, Catherine said warmly. You did this yourself. Your customer satisfaction scores are the highest on the team. You've already built a following of regulars who specifically request your section. You're exactly the kind of person we want at Meridian, not because Alexander Blackwood vouched for you, but because you're exceptional at what you do. That evening, Maya's mother came down from her apartment with a small cake she'd baked. Lopsided and imperfect, but made with love. They sat on Maya's sagging sofa, eating cake with plastic forks and laughing about nothing in particular. And Maya felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Genuine peace. I'm proud of you, Mija, her mother said, squeezing her hand. Not because you got the job, but because you never stopped being who you are. Even when it was hard. Even when it would have been easier to be bitter or give up. You stayed kind. You stayed honest. That's what matters. 3 months later, Maya stood in a different apartment. A one-bedroom in a building where the heat worked and the neighbors were quiet, where she could afford the rent without panic and still have money left over for savings. She'd helped her mother move into a nicer place 2 floors down, close enough to visit, but with space for both of them to breathe. On her kitchen counter sat a card that had arrived that morning. Inside, in neat handwriting, was a simple message. Thank you for reminding me that integrity still matters. You didn't just return a wallet, you restored my faith in people. A.B. Tucked inside the card was a photograph. Alexander Blackwood wearing his father's wedding ring, the one Maya had saved by doing nothing more complicated than the right thing. She placed the card on her refrigerator, next to a photo of her and Rosa at Rosewood, next to a drawing from Lily who still sent her updates about school, next to a birthday card from her brother overseas. These were her treasures. Not money or status or recognition, just proof that she'd mattered to people, that her kindness had rippled outward in ways she might never fully understand. Maya looked around her new apartment. Modest still, but hers, earned through hard work and integrity, and smiled. Gerald had been wrong. Doing the right thing did matter. Maybe not immediately, maybe not obviously, but eventually, in ways both small and profound, goodness found its way back to those who practiced it. Her phone buzzed with the schedule for next week. She was training 2 new servers at Meridian, passing along the lessons she'd learned from Rosa and Marcus and Diane. The cycle continues. Kindness multiplying. One returned wallet leading to one saved job leading to one restored faith leading to countless small moments where someone chose to be better because they'd seen it was possible. That night, Maya slept deeply for the first time in months, dreaming of nothing in particular, unburdened by anxiety or fear or the weight of wondering if she'd survive another day. She'd done more than survive. She'd rebuilt. And in the rebuilding, she discovered a truth that would carry her through whatever came next. Her worth had never depended on whether others recognized it. It had always been there, steady and unchanging, waiting for her to finally believe it herself. Thank you for following Maya's powerful story of integrity and resilience. If this touched your heart or inspired you in any way, please like this video, share it with your friends and family, and subscribe to our channel for more amazing real-life stories. Your support means the world to us, and it helps us continue sharing stories that matter. What would you have done in Maya's situation? Let us know in the comments below.